What Got You Here Won't Get You There, by Marshall Goldsmith. What got you here won't get you there addresses a paradox that emerges as professionals advance in their careers. The very behaviors that drive early success, confidence, decisiveness, assertiveness, and technical competence, often become liabilities at higher levels of leadership. Marshall Goldsmith's central premise is that success creates blind spots. As individuals rise, they receive less honest feedback, become more set in their habits, and unknowingly adopt behaviors that limit their effectiveness. The book focuses not on acquiring new skills, but on eliminating subtle, often unconscious habits that damage relationships and reduce leadership impact. Goldsmith argues that at senior levels, leadership is no longer defined primarily by what an individual knows or produces, but by how that individual influences others. This shift makes interpersonal behavior, not technical expertise, the primary determinant of continued success. The central idea: behavioral habits become constraints. Goldsmith introduces the idea that leadership failure at higher levels is rarely caused by a lack of intelligence or capability. Instead, it stems from small behavioral patterns that accumulate over time. These behaviors are often invisible to the individual but highly visible to others. These habits include interrupting, failing to listen fully, adding unnecessary commentary, seeking to win every discussion, or withholding recognition. Individually, each behavior appears minor. Collectively, they create friction in relationships and erode trust. The implication is that leadership effectiveness is less about dramatic change and more about disciplined awareness of everyday interactions. When these behaviors are ignored, leaders unintentionally create environments where communication becomes constrained and collaboration weakens. When they are addressed, even small adjustments can produce significant improvements in perception and performance. Winning too much. The need to be right. One of the most emphasized concepts in the book is the tendency to win too much. Goldsmith describes how successful individuals often feel compelled to prove they are right, even in situations where doing so adds little value. The need to win manifests in subtle ways: correcting minor details, asserting opinions unnecessarily, or prioritizing personal accuracy over group progress. While these behaviors may demonstrate competence, they often come at the expense of collaboration. The deeper issue is not correctness, but intention. When leaders prioritize being right over being effective, they shift focus from outcomes to ego. This creates an environment where others hesitate to contribute, fearing correction or dismissal. The contrast is clear. Leaders who resist the urge to win every interaction create space for others to engage. Those who do not often limit the collective intelligence of the group. Adding too much value. When contribution becomes interference. Another critical concept Goldsmith identifies is the habit of adding too much value. This occurs when leaders insert their perspective into every discussion, even when unnecessary. On the surface, this behavior appears helpful. Leaders believe they are improving ideas by refining them. However, the unintended consequence is that it discourages ownership. When every idea is modified by authority, contributors feel less invested in outcomes. The implication is that restraint is a leadership skill. Effective leaders recognize when to contribute and when to allow others to own the solution. When this balance is misunderstood, leaders become bottlenecks rather than enablers. In organizations where leaders constantly add value, teams become dependent rather than empowered. In environments where leaders exercise selective input, teams develop confidence and initiative. The feedback gap. Why leaders stop learning. Goldsmith highlights a structural challenge in leadership. As individuals rise, they receive less candid feedback. Subordinates may hesitate to provide criticism, peers may avoid confrontation, and leaders themselves may become less receptive. This creates what can be described as a feedback gap. Without accurate input, leaders continue behaviors that may no longer serve them or the organization. To address this, Goldsmith introduces the idea of active feedback seeking. Leaders must intentionally create mechanisms to receive honest input and, equally important, demonstrate that such input is valued. When feedback is absent or ignored, growth stalls. When feedback is encouraged and acted upon, leaders maintain adaptability and relevance. Apologizing and letting go of the past. The book also emphasizes the role of acknowledgement in behavioral change. When leaders recognize that certain behaviors have negatively impacted others, addressing those behaviors openly can rebuild trust. Goldsmith suggests that effective leaders focus less on defending past actions and more on committing to future improvement. This shift from justification to accountability changes how others perceive intent. The implication is not about admitting fault in a performative way, but about signaling alignment with collective goals. Leaders who resist this step often remain anchored to past behaviors. Those who embrace it demonstrate adaptability and maturity. Feedforward, a future-oriented approach. One of Goldsmith's key contributions is the concept of feedforward, which shifts the focus from past mistakes to future improvement. Instead of analyzing what went wrong, individuals ask others for suggestions on how to improve moving forward. This approach reduces defensiveness because it avoids blame. It also makes feedback more actionable, as it focuses on behavior that can be changed. In business environments, feedforward accelerates development by keeping conversations solution-oriented. When organizations rely solely on traditional feedback, discussions often become retrospective and emotionally charged. Feedforward maintains momentum and encourages continuous improvement. Business applications. Leadership at scale. The principles in What Got You Here Won't Get You There have direct implications for business performance. At senior levels, leadership effectiveness is amplified across teams and systems. Small behavioral habits scale into cultural norms. Leaders who demonstrate restraint, listen actively, and prioritize group success over personal validation create high-performing environments. Their teams communicate openly, collaborate effectively, and execute with clarity. Conversely, leaders who remain unaware of their habits create friction that slows decision-making and reduces engagement. Over time, this friction compounds into organizational inefficiency. For entrepreneurs, these insights are particularly relevant during growth phases. Early-stage behaviors that drive momentum must evolve as teams expand. Without this evolution, leaders become limiting factors in their own organizations. Actionable takeaways. The core lesson of What Got You Here Won't Get You There is that leadership growth requires subtraction as much as addition. Awareness of everyday behavior determines how influence is experienced by others. The discipline to listen fully, contribute selectively, and prioritize collective outcomes over personal validation strengthens leadership credibility. Sustainable leadership is built through continuous adjustment rather than static success. Feedback must be actively pursued and acted upon. Improvement must be forward-focused rather than anchored in past justification. Leaders who internalize these principles remain effective as complexity increases. Those who do not risk becoming constrained by the very habits that once defined their success. Conclusion. Marshall Goldsmith's work reframes leadership development as a process of refinement rather than accumulation. The challenge is not acquiring more knowledge, but removing behaviors that limit effectiveness. As leaders advance, the margin for improvement shifts from what they do to how they interact. Influence becomes the defining metric. In that context, small behavioral changes produce outsized results. The book's central insight remains consistent throughout. Past success does not guarantee future effectiveness. Adaptation, awareness, and intentional behavior are required to continue growing. If this breakdown provided value, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and enable notifications for more leadership and personal development summaries designed for real-world application in less than 10 minutes. Goldsmith, Marshall, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Hyperion, 2007.